such an excellent and eloquent analysis. I'd like to now move on towards the position of the African American people today, those who have a problem with us wanting to achieve African American independence and building this nation on our own. Please elaborate on that.
Well, as you pointed out, that we're already segregated. I mean, there's de jure laws and de jure and de facto. De jure is laws or policies. De facto is in practice. We may not have de jure laws that segregate against us, but in practice, it's very real. There's a book written by Douglas Blackman, and one of the Pulitzer Prizes is Slavery by Another Name. It's basically stating that the policies, although they haven't specifically identified a marginalization of black people, but those black codes which succeeded the slave codes under slavery, the black codes, which have been transformed into, transmuted into another means by which we can be criminalized as a population. That we are now put in this position whereby we are. We have been marginalized and kept pretty much in the same condition that we were under segregation. So what alternatives do we have? As you pointed out, Captain Hitt, there are nations being created all day. You know the numbers very well, and you quote them rather eloquently. Why is it that we cannot have our own land by which we can thrive and self-actualize, and is this constant of the preamble supposedly, or the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? The Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. None of those things were allowed for us in this society. Roger B. Taney, who was in the late 19th century, who was the chief Supreme Court justice at the time of the Dred Scott case that inaugurated in our society, instituted separate but equal segregation. He made a famous statement, that the black man has no rights which the white man is bound to respect. This is the Supreme Court justice, and not just him as an individual. Think of a culture in which somebody who is that prominent in the society could make such a statement and it be accepted as the norm. So we live in a culture, and it's not just economics. We look at every area with the media and the school system, the attitudes of Afrophobia, the hatred of irrational fear and hatred of black people, which is devolved to us as we acquire via social learning. That it has so devastated us that now it has become self-perpetuating, and many of us have internalized it. And it's not our fault. Again, this is the process of oppression. Any group has been so dominated and oppressed would acquire these same attitudes or memes, if you will, beliefs and values that have been transmitted to us. So what is the alternative? We have to extirpate ourselves out of the society. I mean, in 1857, Liberia was created by the United States because they were fearful of that the black population would outstrip them, and that we would, the black people in this country would overtake the white people, and we would, destroy them or destroy the society. So they wanted to siphon off some of the blacks, so they created, Liberia for the express purpose of decreasing the population of blacks here. They can do that today. I mean, the communists, a lot of us talk about hatred of the communists. The Communist Party in the United States was in favor of creating a land, and that's one of the reasons why the white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, the White Citizens Council, and the American government, one of the reasons they despise the Communist Party here. And we have to be clear, we don't have permanent friends, we have permanent interests, So at the time, the Communist Party wanted to create a land specifically for blacks in this country, in the Carolinas, so that just like we have the Native Americans don't pay taxes, Native Americans have reservations, billions of dollars are being generated on their property on these reservations, despite the propaganda that they're not prospering. That's a lie. I've actually heard white people make statements that the Native Americans are suffering more than the blacks. You know what? Even Dr. Claude Anderson said, "Well, let us trade places any day." The Native Americans, there's an Indian Bureau in the federal government. There has never been, although we were specifically targeted for disenfranchisement and oppression and segregation and marginalization in society. There were specific laws to keep us from participating in the socioeconomic system and the political system in this country. There has never been any legislation specifically to uplift us out of that condition. The white women, the feminist movement, you have VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act. You have the Equal Rights Amendment, specifically for the demographic of, let's face it, white women. Not all of the women, white women. But we have never, although we were targeted specifically, we have not had any legislation to uplift us out of it. That's the disingenuous hypocrisy of this society towards us, and they will never change. It's embedded in the culture and the psyche of this culture and this society.
Sir, once again, such an eloquent analysis of the social, economic, and political perspective that we are currently in. Now, let me ask you, sir, on nation building itself. I would like you to explain to the individual listeners that are there, what benefits do you see for us as being an independent African American nation where we rule ourselves? And let me make one point very clear to the people out there. Pan-Africanism is not Pan-Africanism if there is no talk about an independent African American nation. We are with Africa like everyone else, but you cannot talk about Pan-Africanism if the subject of African American nationhood is not a part of it. That is what we at the International African American Caucus believe. We also, in the International African American Caucus, are seeking land for us as African Americans to rule ourselves independently. We need time to reintegrate. We're not looking to live under the rule of anyone else. We don't need to live under the rule of anyone else because we as African Americans are the foundation of creating the most powerful nation on this planet. We know how to build a nation for ourselves. So, Senator Sahaludeen, with that being said, sir, tell us what you see as the tremendous benefit to us as the African American people for those who wish to go towards creating this nation itself.
Self-determination. Dr. Claude Anderson, who wrote the book, the Blueprint for Black Power, spoke about us always being second banana, always fighting to promote someone else's, support someone else's agenda. As you stated, Captain Hitt, we have fought to help the Koreans free themselves, or we fought for the supposedly for Iraqi freedom, for Afghani freedom, but we have never, as Muhammad Ali said, nobody's ever called me the N-word. No Vietnamese ever called me the N-word, and he refused to be inducted into the military to fight in Vietnam. So, actually, so that we can self-actualize, be the best that we could be, so we can throw this yoke of oppression off of us. This is what the so-called founding fathers in the colonies here. They were not anywhere near the oppression, did not experience that we're experiencing even today. Under this regime of racism, whites, this Afrophobic, this society that has treated us as an underclass and seeks to keep us in this condition. We have the white community under King George during the time of the American Revolution was not treated nearly as harshly as we're being treated today. Yet we endure. We have grown accustomed to this. It's a possibility for us intrapsychically. I like to focus on intrapsychically and interpersonal dynamics to heal, to develop a culture that isn't backward, that was devolved to us to keep us in this condition of subordination, so that we can uplift ourselves, so we can start to brainstorm, that we can learn the skills. Just as again, I don't like to refer too much to religious metaphors, but the metaphor of the supposed Hebrew slaves who were released from Egypt, led by Moses under the Pharaoh's enslavement, that they needed that 40 years wandering in the desert to come into their own, to learn self-sufficiency. We have the skills. We're very strong individuals, but collectively we have been prevented from establishing an organizational will and establishing the types of initiatives that would benefit us as a people. The only way we're going to be able to achieve that and realize that is by actually doing it. We can't think our way into good behavior, but we can behave our way into good thinking. That's the rule of thumb. So we have to be in a position where we can begin to practice self-sufficiency. Just by talking about it, that's a prelude to it. That's a process, one of the fundamental steps towards change. But actually, we're at a stage now, as you always say, Captain Hitt, that we're ready to reify that, to enact it, and to be the best that we could be, as they used to say, in terms of joining, to induce people to join the military. We are a strong people. I just want to say, we have 105 historically black colleges. As you point out, the wealth that we have amassed per annum in this country would make us, is that we are a wealthy people, not only in terms of material wealth, also intellectually. The IQ of the black American is one of the highest, actually the highest within the black diaspora in the Caribbean, South America. There's a book called IQ and the Wealth of Nations. It's propaganda that we are inferior. That was we have a war on all fronts, and our enemies are trying to demoralize us. We are not an inferior people. We're very strong as a people. So the benefit of us having our own land is that we don't have to anymore seek to demonstrate and go into the streets and demand or at least beg for crumbs off the table, which is really demanding, requesting back some of the money that has been and the resources that have been expropriated from us by the larger society, including the government and those other factions that exploit us. As we pointed out before, we function at a trade deficit with the rest of society. 95 cents of every dollar, 95% of everything that we earn is going almost directly out of our hands. So it's a myth and a lie that we're a burden to society. We're making people rich. Waves of immigrants come here, and then they know that if they go into a black community, they're going to make millions and millions of dollars, six figures, gas stations, bodegas. And this system and this society facilitates their ability to do so, to exploit us. So we cannot rely on the society anymore. Even the white community is developing, coming to the awareness that they cannot. The Occupy Wall Street movement and is acknowledging that even the white leadership, they can't rely on it. So if the whites can't rely on their leadership, why should we rely on the white community collectively? So we have to extricate ourselves.
Once again, sir, that just very well put and eloquently said. With regards to, please explain to the individuals of why it's so important for us to take that time when we reintegrate on the African continent, why it's important for us to have the land for ourselves and rule ourselves on day one, as opposed to the Pan-African approach that a lot of people believe in of going there and trying to reintegrate. Why do you believe, and why can you explain to the listeners out here from your perspective of why it's so important for us on day one just to do it for ourselves?
Well, because we could wind up, in essence, trading a European American, white American master for an African ethnic master. That was the conflict that existed in Rwanda between the Tutsi and the Hutu. We see a lot of conflicts throughout Africa. It's called tribalism, but because of the Berlin Conference in the 1880s, where the Europeans carved up the continent, that these geopolitical constructs that were created for the benefit of the Europeans actually created a miasma of confusion, a kind of Babylon-type situation whereby you had these ethnic groups in Africa that had distinct cultures and distinct agendas in terms of, their lifestyle, and sometimes that they had antagonisms competing for resources in the society, and that on the African continent. So it fomented conflict, and there was a lot of warfare. So it is not. I think that among the Pan-Africanist community, particularly in America, they have this idealized perception of Africa, which does not exist. They have a lot of problems, even culturally. Their cultures did not sustain them and help them to resist the European incursion. So we should not rely on them to and think that they're going to welcome us. They're looking for reciprocity. We have to establish ourselves